The ranch had not heard footsteps in years. Not real ones. Not the kind that carried purpose or hope, only the wind, the dust, the slow decay of fences and memories. And the man who lived there had become part of that silence, moving through his days like a shadow, feeding horses that barely needed him, fixing boards that barely mattered, breathing air that felt heavier each year. And when he first saw the 4 figures on the horizon, he thought they were ghosts. Heat illusions, tricks of loneliness. But they kept walking, steady, determined, unafraid. And when they finally reached him, he saw 4 young Apache sisters standing before him with eyes that carried both fire and exhaustion, strength and sorrow. And the eldest spoke in a voice that did not beg loudly but begged deeply, telling him their village was gone, burned by accident, scattered by loss, that they had no land, no protection, no place the world would recognize as theirs. And someone had told them of a man who lived alone on a ranch forgotten by time, a man who still respected land and honor. And they had walked days to find him, not for charity but for something harder, for belonging, for responsibility, for someone to stand with them when the world no longer would. And as he listened, the ranch felt different, the air thicker, the silence heavier, and he realized that what they were asking was not shelter but a bond, not a favor but a commitment, not survival but fate. And when the youngest sister finally whispered, "Will you claim us?" she did not mean possession but protection, not ownership but acceptance, not control but connection. And something inside him broke open, something old and painful and long asleep, and he saw his own loneliness reflected in their eyes, his own loss reflected in their journey. And without fully understanding why, he nodded, opening the gate, opening the house, opening a future he had not believed he would ever have again. And as they stepped onto the ranch, the land itself seemed to respond, the horses lifting their heads, the wind shifting, the dust settling, as if the world had been waiting for exactly this moment to begin again. Life did not change loudly, but it changed completely, with laughter replacing echo, with cooking smoke replacing dust, with voices replacing wind. And the sisters brought life into every forgotten corner of the ranch, singing as they worked, honoring the land with rituals and care, planting where nothing had grown, repairing where nothing had mattered. And he found himself becoming more than a caretaker of property. He became a guardian, a teacher, a brother, a protector, someone whose choices now mattered again. And in return they became more than guests, they became family, not through blood but through shared survival, shared labor, shared nights around the fire telling stories of ancestors and storms and dreams. And the youngest would laugh while trying to ride the horse that always refused to cooperate. And the second would hum old melodies while washing clothes by the river. And the third would sit, quietly carving symbols into wood with a patience that felt ancient. And the eldest would watch everything, with eyes that carried both pride and responsibility. And slowly the ranch began to feel alive, not because it was full of people, but because it was full of meaning. And he noticed that even his own movements changed. His steps became lighter. His mornings no longer felt empty. His nights no longer felt endless. And the weight in his chest that had been there for years slowly loosened its grip. And he realized that loneliness was not the absence of people, but the absence of connection, and connection was now everywhere. In the shared meals, in the shared work, in the shared silence. And one evening, the eldest sister explained what they had truly meant when they asked him to claim them, that in their culture, to be claimed by someone was not to be owned but to be chosen, to be bound by mutual responsibility, to walk forward knowing someone would stand with you when everything else fell apart, that it was a promise not written on paper but written into action, into sacrifice, into everyday care. And he listened in silence as the firelight danced across her face, realizing that the word claim in his world had always meant power, but in hers it meant protection. And something inside him shifted as he understood that he had been afraid of responsibility, not because it was heavy, but because it was meaningful. And meaningful things always have the power to hurt, and yet they are the only things worth carrying. And he realized that he too had been claimed by the land that refused to let him leave, claimed by the sister's trust that refused to let him hide, claimed by the presence that refused to let him fade, claimed back into humanity from the slow isolation he had been dying inside. And as seasons passed, the ranch flourished, not because of cattle or money, but because of connection, because of the way the sisters treated the soil like a living thing, because of the way they thanked the water before drinking it, because of the way they spoke to the horses instead of commanding them. And the ranch responded as if it recognized respect. The crops grew stronger, the animals became calmer. The land itself seemed less hostile, and storms that once would have felt threatening now felt like shared experiences. Moments where everyone worked together to protect what they had built. And in those moments he understood that survival was never meant to be a solo journey, that strength was never meant to be hoarded, that life was not about standing tall alone, but about standing together when things fall apart. And the man who had once been alone now carried 4 futures alongside his own, not as burdens but as responsibilities that gave his life weight and direction. And the 4 sisters who had once been lost now had a place that would never abandon them, not because it was perfect but because it was chosen. And the story became not one of begging but of choosing, not one of rescue but of mutual healing. 5 broken paths crossing to become one, and the ranch that had once stood empty now stood full of life, purpose, and something stronger than love, belonging. A belonging that did not demand perfection, only presence that did not promise ease, only meaning that did not guarantee happiness, only connection. And in that connection, they all found something they had not known they were searching for. Not a home built from walls and roofs, but a home built from people, promises, and the quiet decision to stay when leaving would have been easier.